Here we go. Okay, so good morning. I'm so glad that all of you could join us today. For those of you who don't know, my name is Kimberly Way, and I'm the Chief Experience Officer with the Michigan Works Association. I am going to be your moderator for the webinar today. Oh no, I just got rid of my intro. Oh, here it is. Okay. Today's webinar is Am I Inspired? The Spirit of Engagement and Retention. And our presenter today is Curtis Camponi, who is the founder of Speak for MC. Curtis started working with at-risk teens in Florida, and he discovered the power of motivational interviewing, which has quickly become his most useful technique to positively influence others. So we are so excited and grateful that he is able to be here with us today and share that knowledge with us. This webinar is going to be recorded, and a link to the recording will be sent to those of you who registered. So look out for that in the follow-up email. Please do feel free to ask questions during the presentation in the chat box. Curtis is going to be asking questions that will require participation, so you can either come off mute or put them in the chat, and we will be monitoring that so that your questions can be answered. You don't have to save them till the end. As far as association news, we do continue to add to our event and training calendar, so please check the website, michiganworks.org, for scheduled dates and new training opportunities. And with that, I will turn it over to Curtis.
Thank you, Kim. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
Audio's good. Awesome. So real quick on some logistics side, I will be asking for your feedback and your experiences and your ideas. If you want to go off mute to participate, I'm all in on that. Just go off mute and then share your thoughts. The only thing is if you go off mute, just do me a favor and go back on mute. With this many people in the training, if we get a lot of feedback, it can get a little crazy. And then the other thing is the chat box. Throughout the training, if you have feedback, questions, or a response to one of the questions that I asked, go ahead and put that in the chat box. If you don't know where the chat box is, I guess you got to find it, because I don't think I'll be able to describe where it's at, but it's there. You know, go ahead and look for it and then type in hi, hello, whatever you want to do. Miss Leah just said, hi, homegirl. I'm from SoCal as well. So Miss Leah is representing with Robin, I see. So let's talk about this thing. Let's make this thing happen. Oh, wait, one more thing.
I did.
I like it. One more thing. If you have the opportunity to put your camera on, please do, just so it's just not, me and Kim staring at each other for an hour and a half. So if you have the opportunity to put your camera on, I have a screen above me. That means I get to see you. And now it feels like we're interacting in real time. I think that's pretty cool. So that's all I got. Let's talk about it. So if you know anything about me, I love quotes. I don't know if it's because at some point I was going through something really tough personally, and then I saw a quote that stuck out to me and it really helped. So ever since then, I try to work quotes into everything that I do. And the very first quote I want to put up here, and it kind of drives everything we're going to talk about when we talk about engagement and retention, is on your screen right now. And it says, if you give a plant soil, water, and sunshine, it will grow upwards towards the light. If you give a plant soil, water, and sunshine, it will grow upwards towards the light. When you hear that quote, when you read that quote, what does that mean to you? How do you interpret that quote? What do you think it means? And you could go off mute, or you can write in the chat box. But what do you think that quote means? If you give a plant soil, water, and sunshine, it will grow upwards towards the light. Either in the chat box or go off mute. What comes to mind when you hear that quote?
Well, in pertaining to like things that we do, I mean, it's like given what a person needs to grow, and given the tools and anything that is positive, that we figure out what they need and we give it to them.
Yeah.
Or help them find it.
I like that. Try to support them, help them grow, give them the tools, that experience that you have to help them prosper, for sure. I like that. What else?
Just to add on to that, when I see that, I'm thinking about just like relationships that we build and what we do, and then just being intentional. So when you think about planting seeds and, putting water and, cultivating that, you have to have some intentionality. And so to like bring it together, it's like, what we do over here, we have to be intentional about the customers that we serve and the time that we spend, and the quality of work that we do, to help cultivate and help them towards their goals.
I love that. I love that. So let me ask you a question based off that, James, and I'll ask this to you and then everybody else. If you bring a plant home and you give it adequate soil, water, and sunshine, you give it those things, but for some reason that plant does not grow, does that mean that water, sunshine, and adequate soil are bad for plants?
I would say no. Maybe it's just not, maybe it's not a season to sprout or time.
Maybe it's not ready.
Maybe it's not ready to grow, because a lot of times we have a tend to rush things, and when we don't see the success we think we should see, when we should see it, if it makes sense. But that's not necessarily the case. It just hasn't had the adequate amount of time to sprout or bust through the soil. So I would say no. It doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong with the soil or the light. It's just that the time.
I love that. I love that. And Ms. Corbin also says time matters. Maybe we need to adjust the amount of water. Maybe it's about assessment. And the reason I asked that question, and those are all great responses from the chat box and those that went off mute, is like we've all known a rose can grow in concrete, right? And then there's where you can give a rose nothing that it needs and it still finds a way to thrive. Or you can give a plant everything it needs and it just doesn't grow. So what we're trying to do here is not necessarily push all our chips in the center just solely based off that plant grows. What we want to do is judge ourselves by how disciplined we are in doing the things that'll put that plant in the best position to grow, right? What is most likely going to help that customer grow, engage in services and retain in services? And if you judge yourself on your discipline to doing those things, regardless if you have the rose from concrete or you did everything right and it doesn't thrive, you can have peace in that, right? So what we're going to talk about is, let's talk about the soil. Let's talk about the water. Let's talk about the sunshine that can best help our customers grow up towards the light, and challenge ourselves just to be disciplined to using those, and then have peace in what the outcome will be, right? So let's dive into that a little bit more. And we did the introduction. I appreciate Kim for the introduction. Just for a little more context, a lot of this started because a door got slammed in my face. I don't know if anybody else here has had a door slammed in their face before, but a door got slammed in my face. James Rose raised his head. So here's the thing. When I first got in this field, I got in this field as a case manager where I was helping customers and students get jobs, maybe get a mentor, get into school, all that good stuff, right? And that guy you see right there in that picture, that's his first ID badge. He was so confident. Some people would say it was borderline cocky, right? Like I don't know if anybody else had this when they first got into the field, but I thought I was going to save the world. I thought I was going to drive in whatever neighborhood, whatever area, just save everything, right? That's what I was going to do. So because I had that mindset, they tend to give me the more challenging customers, the ones that weren't really engaged in services, the ones that wouldn't come back or return any calls. So they gave me this one young man. He was 18 years old, wasn't engaged in anything, wasn't working towards his goals. So I ended up doing an unannounced visit. Has anybody ever had to do an unannounced visit to a home where you just show up and see if you can try to connect them and establish some rapport? I see Amy's like, yes, absolutely, with an exclamation point. So I do this unannounced visit and I knock on the door and he barely opens the door and he goes, "What do you want?" Like, wow, okay, that's one way to open the door, but I get it. You know, maybe he thinks I'm selling like, window cleaner or something like that. I said, "Hey, I recently got transferred to your case, and I'm interested in learning what goals you have and how I can help you be successful. We can do this together. Right? That's fair enough. He says, I don't need your help. And he slams the door in my face. Okay, well, that guy you see in that picture there, like I told you, he was pretty optimistic. He was an optimistic gentleman. So what he did is he knocked on the door again. So I knocked on the door again. He barely opens the door again. He's like, man, what do you want? I said, I looked at your goal plan and it says that you want to go to community college. I'm interested to hear how I can help you make that happen. He says, I'm going to college, but I don't need your help to do it. And he closes the door on me again. So I don't know about everybody, my Michigan people on this training right now, but 2 door slams are my quota for one day. It's like a 2 door slam every 24-hour quota. So after that second door slam, I decided to leave. But while I'm leaving the area, I saw the community college that was on his plan, so I decided to go in. I went in, got some information about financial aid, finding out what trades they offered, all of that stuff, right? But on my way out, I noticed there was a gift shop, and at that gift shop, there was a shirt with the college's name on the front. Now, this is an important part of the story. I don't know, Kim, what y'all's budget is over in Michigan, but for me, this is important. The shirt was on sale. The shirt was on sale. So because the shirt was on sale, I bought it. And after I bought that shirt, what do you think I did? What do you think I did after I bought that shirt?
You went back.
I went back. Went back to the house. Yep. See it in the chat box too. Went knocking again. Michelle said yes. So I went back to the house, knocked again. When he opened the door, he was looking at me. He's like, man, what is up with this dude? Like, this is crazy. He opened the door. I handed him the shirt and I said, look, man, you told me that you're going to college. I believe you're going to college. As a matter of fact, you're going to wear this shirt on your first day. He took the shirt from me. He did close the door again. But after a couple seconds, he came back out and he was wearing the shirt. No lie. Wearing the shirt with a smile on his face. That was the first step towards establishing rapport, demonstrating compassion, showing this young person that I'm willing to work on his behalf and truly be there collaboratively to work towards these goals, right? And that's just one example of a handful of examples that I have that continually show me there are a certain set of techniques, skills, approaches that can 100% inspire change. And that's what we're trying to do here, is we're trying to inspire the customer to consider a perspective other than their own. We're not trying to just change them. You can't just change someone. If it was that easy, man, these outcomes would be fantastic, huh? It's not about that. It's about inspiring someone to see the world or see a plan or see a goal just a little differently. That's what these tools can do. And it became a passion of mine so much that I ended up becoming a trainer and speaking about these tools myself. I have trained case managers, mental health counselors, I've done workforce director, train the trainer programs for center directors, career coordinators, recruitment specialists. One of them, and every time I do something, I'm asking for that next challenge. Give me that next challenge, that next challenge. Would you believe they sent me to the South Carolina Department of South Carolina Department Prison, high risk prison, to train 110 correction officers? Ooh, boy, can you imagine? I don't know if you see me on the camera, but imagine this guy walking onto a prison and saying, hey, use these tools with your offenders, right? Like, it was wild, but it ended up being a 96% satisfaction rate, them saying they believe these tools would help them, and they have helped them with their offenders, right? So I say all that to say is the next challenge for me was to go all in on this passion and my purpose to help give individuals the tools to inspire others, which influenced me to create the company and why I'm here today, called Speak for MC, Speak for Motivating Change. And by the way, if you can see the screen, that group photo to the right, if you started on your left, that big gentleman doing this, that was one of the correction officers on my very first day when I did that training. He raised his hand and he said, "I got a question." By the way, if anyone ever does this, it says, "I got a question," they don't really have a question. They just want to tell you something. So he said, "I got a question. I don't think I need to be here, and I don't know why you're here." And I said, based on what I've learned about, the barriers and the challenges you face every single day, I just appreciate that you are. He ended up participating more than any other person in that training, right? So let's talk about. Oh, by the way, that's me wearing my Buccaneer pajamas during a leadership workshop I did with some leaders. I already brought up the Buccaneers. I'm probably going to name drop them a couple more times. I apologize for anybody out there. Oh, Michelle is a Tampa fan. Michelle, you're my favorite. I appreciate you. You're the best in the world. Thank you, Michelle. All right, let's keep it moving. All right, does anybody know what motivational interviewing is? By the way, I think it's hilarious that Kim told me that she thought MI was about Michigan. She thought this was Michigan-inspired training instead of MI as MI is actually motivational interviewing. Has anybody heard of motivational interviewing before? Does anybody have any experience in this or know what this is? Have any experience? No? It's okay to say no. No's a good answer too. That means I get to share what it is.
Yeah, I have a little bit of experience, not a lot.
Yeah.
When I worked in the youth facility, Jackson County Youth Facility, we had to use motivational interviewing skills to try to better engage the youth, to help get them to answer questions that are a little bit more open-ended, to dive a little bit more deeper without, seeming too overbearing, if that's a better word to use. So just a little bit though, not a whole lot, not a lot of practice with it, because it's like they're like, do this training, but then they didn't even really believe it in themselves. So I was like, well, what happened to the motivational interviewing? Yeah. Right. So a little bit.
Yeah. And that's a good point too, right? Like I was talking with Kim about this earlier, is you can have the right tool, but
we can't hear anything.
Uh-oh. Did we lose you?
Can you guys hear us?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah,
We can't hear you guys at all.
You can't hear me? Uh-oh. I don't know. I think the majority of people can hear us, Kim. So I don't know if there's a technical issue on that side. Maybe we got to turn the volume up on the computer. Not sure.
Yeah, I'll message her and see what we can do.
All right, cool. All right, let's talk about everything I do is inspired by MI. That's why it's called MI Inspired. It's the one thing that no matter if I was in South Carolina, Florida, New York, or California, this stuff works everywhere. And by the way, this is an evidence-based model that's been around for a while. And they've took these tools and they've worked it into sales, workforce, healthcare. Here's the fancy definition. It says it's a directive, customer-centered helping style for eliciting behavior change by helping customers explore and resolve ambivalence. Essentially, what we're trying to do is engage the customer in their own change or in their own goals. So instead of us trying to be the expert to tell them what to do, or getting agitated or frustrated if they're not going the direction we want them to, or them getting agitated or frustrated, this is a collaborative style to help them work towards that journey, primarily by resolving ambivalence. And we'll touch base on that here in a second. I'll explain what that is in a second. And then the philosophy, it has to be a partnership. It has to be you and me. We're working together to make this happen. And one of the best ways to demonstrate a partnership is asking the customer permission before giving them advice. What do you think is the reason that we should ask permission before giving someone advice or giving someone guidance? What do you think is the purpose of that? The reason I wanted to put this in this training. And again, you go chat box or go off mute, whatever's easiest for you. But what is the reason we want to ask permission before giving advice? Amanda says they might just want to vent. Yep. Amy says not everyone's looking for advice. Very true. Who else? They have to be heard. You got to make sure the customer is open to advice. So what does that matter? What does it matter if they're open or willing to hear your advice with the customer? How does that matter? Ms. Taylor says they might not need the help, or at least the help you think they need. That's a good point. That's a good point. Ms. Roth, if I pronounce that correctly, I love your response there. You said they're more apt to use the advice. Are you able to go off mute and elaborate that a little bit, what you mean by that?
Hi. Yeah, so basically, in my experience, if I ask if I can give advice, I kind of gauge how willing they are to actually hear what I have to say, and then if they will actually put that into practice. Because sometimes people will just listen to what you have to say and then not utilize that, which is really not beneficial for either side. But anyway, that's what I meant by that.
Yeah. You hit it head on, Ms. Roth. To usually, if you give someone unsolicited advice that they didn't want, they respond in two ways. One, they do what you just said, Ms. Roth, where you just nod your head and you're like, oh yeah, thank you for that advice. And you're really thinking, I can't wait for this person to shut up. Nobody asked them, but you want to be respectful, right? Or if you're just not in the mood, you just get outwardly and say, I didn't ask you. Or you get like resistant, or you see the body language change, right? And think about you, the last time you received unsolicited advice, what did that feel like? Right? It's like, oh, you're like, all right, I didn't ask you. So the idea, and it doesn't have to be clinical. It's not, hey, James, do you mind if I give you a suggestion? I'm not saying do that, but you could easily say, hey, James, you mind if I give you some feedback based off what I've seen work in the past? And if James says, nah, man, I'm good, all I have to say is, all right, no worries. If you change your mind, I'm here, right? Because if I give James unsolicited advice, then I circle back in a week or so, he didn't take it. So now I'm frustrated. So I'm probably now going to restate my advice. Why didn't you take it? I told you what to do. Then you won't take it again. And now we're both getting frustrated and we're going in this cycle, right? So a very good little tool for your tool belt. And I know sometimes it could be uncomfortable because we have experiences and we have all these resources. So we want to jump in and we want to fix things. But the only way change and goal planning and retention is possible is if the customer feels that they had a say and a real input on their plan and their goals, right? So ask permission before give advice. And this other fancy word I have up here is called ambivalence. Does anybody know? And I know you all know what ambivalence is, but sometimes the word throws people off. Anyone want to take a guess at what ambivalence is? Any ambivalent?
They're just not engaged.
Yeah, for sure. When they're ambivalent, it's kind of a good way to explain ambivalence. And there's the fancy terminology on your screen, but I'm not going to read that. But a good way to describe it is 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Y'all heard that expression before? They see there's value in working towards a goal, but then they're going to give you some reasons why maybe they're not ready to do it yet, right? Like, I do know I need to get a job, but right now I just got too much going on at home. No, I do know I need to start working, but I'm not working minimum wage. I'm telling you that right now, right? So we're identifying there's value, and Matt said it perfectly, mixed feelings. There's value in working towards this goal, but I'm going to give you a bunch of reasons why I don't want to right now. And largely when people do that, it's a defense mechanism, because the idea of doing something new and challenging pushes you out of your comfort zone. And it means that there's a possibility for failure. And all of that is scary. So the best way I can protect myself from that, instead of saying that, is to create all these reasons why I can't right now, right? So what these skills do is it helps the customer resolve that and move past that to start working towards action. So what I want to do, the best way to do this is to normalize what we're talking about for the next 45 minutes or so. Think of a personal or workplace goal. And if you're comfortable, you can put it in a chat box. If it's too personal and you don't want to say it, that's fine too. But think of a personal or a workplace goal that you sometimes are ambivalent about. And the most common one is like the exercise. Every time I do these trainings, virtual, in person, the exercise is the most common one. But there's some more examples on your screen. I want to lose weight, but I don't have time to meal plan. I want to have work-life balance, but there's too many vacancies and I don't have time. If I quit smoking, I would save money, but everything is just too stressful right now, and that's the thing that calms me down. You get what I'm saying here? So here's some examples there. Think of your own. Miss Taylor, I want to lose weight, but I love chocolate chip cookies. Fair enough. That is an ambivalent statement. Nikki said healthier, yep. Kim, I want to keep my desk organized and free of clutter, but you don't have your reasons. You don't have your reasons there. You don't want to share. I get it.
I'm just so busy. I'm just too busy. I'm just too busy. Who has time to clean it all up at the end of the day? I want to go put my pajamas on.
Life is just too hectic to clean that desk. I got you. And that's funny because imagine the complex problems you probably solve in your personal and professional life on a daily basis that you make time for and the energy for, but the desk is, whoa, not right now. I want to crochet more, but I like watching Disney movies. Okay. Time management and the way we balance our time is a really common one as well. Robin, I want to return your phone call, but I bet you there's an interesting follow-up on that one that we're not going to do right now, Robin, in the chat box, because this is being recorded and I don't want to put you out there like that. All right. So just
definitely. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So think about what yours is. And then as we talk about the way to help move past that, kind of let me know your thoughts. All right. So let's jump into it. The basic just for some context, the trainings that I do for MI, it can go all the way up to 18 hours. So we only have an hour together. So what I'm trying to do is pick and choose the things that you can take away right now, use right now, and can 100% impact your customers today. And one of those things is rapport. If you can establish rapport effectively with your customers, I promise you that is 80% of the battle. At the very least, they're going to be open to considering what you're saying, and they'll pick up the phone. They'll be more likely to be vulnerable with you and tell you all the reasons they're not going to do something, the honest ones, if you have rapport. Rapport is everything. And how it works is there are actually 6 questions that every person considers when they're trying to decide if they're going to engage in a relationship with you. And this isn't just your customers, by the way. Whatever that behavior is that you're ambivalent about, your willingness to work and take advice from someone about that behavior is dependent on these 6 questions. So let's talk about what the first 3 are. And by the way, I told you I got to keep dropping Buccaneers in here. That's Mike Evans. He's the Buccaneers wide receiver. He's the best in the league. He is the GOAT, and that's me meeting him. It kind of connects to rapport, but not really. But you know, when you have your own company, you can do those type of things. But let's keep it moving. All right. So here are the three questions. The very first one is, do I feel respected? Do I feel respected? So this is what someone is asking themselves. And by the way, this isn't something that really consciously you're saying. Do I feel respected? I don't know. I think I do. It's not happening like that, right? This is just what's happening naturally when you're interacting with this person. This is stuff you're weighing. So do I feel respected? So let me ask you all again in the chat box, or, all right, Joel, you went too far with that comment. Where's the photo of me and AB? Joel, I have never kicked somebody out of a training before, but there is a first for everything. So that is strike 1. And unlike AB, you're not going to get 9 strikes today, Joel. So let's keep it moving. All right. So the first one is, do I feel respected? let me ask this to the chat box or for you to go off mute. How does respect matter when you're initially trying to establish a rapport with a customer? How does respect factor in? Michelle says listening. Tina says if they don't feel respected, they won't trust. Sure. Makes a person feel valued. Demonstrates patience. Angela says we're hearing them, not just to listen. Think about yourself. When is the last time you took guidance from someone or was vulnerable with someone that you felt disrespected you or didn't respect what you were saying? How often does that happen? Right? So what's actually interesting about respect is people will ignore guidance that they know can actually help them if it's coming from a place of disrespect. If the source of that advice is from a place from someone they feel doesn't care about them, hasn't tried to listen to them, they will ignore it. So I guess my other question, and I'm getting some of it in the chat box, is how do you all right now with the customers? And I want to talk early on because first impressions, there's so many studies that show how impactful first impressions can be and how long lasting they can be. How do you right now create a culture of respect with your customers? How do you show them that you respect them? What does that look like right now in Michigan? Active listening, compassion. Allow them to plan their activity. That's a big one. Empathy as well. Yeah. And this goes right into number 2. The second question that ties into this is, does the staff listen and understand me? Does the staff listen and understand me? This is one of the most important questions they're going to ask themselves, especially when they first come in your doors and you're explaining the services that you can offer, is does this staff listen and understand me? Notice how it doesn't say, does the staff agree with me? Or does the staff understand exactly what it's like to be me? That's not the expectation. Does the staff listen and understand me? Because here's the thing, if they feel heard, they will then more likely be willing to consider your perspective if you consider theirs, right? So even if they say something like, I don't want to get a job because I can make more money just living off the government, and I'm cool with that. If you say, well, what kind of life is that? That's not a good life. Don't you want to be more than that? You're not hearing what they're saying, and you're not trying to understand what they're saying. So all they'll do is start giving you arguments and reasons why they're right and why you're wrong, right? Where instead you might say, hey, kind of talk to me about that. Break it down for me. Help me understand. And when you do that, they're going to want to talk and explain, and they'll start to talk themselves into the idea that, well, maybe there is a different perspective other than mine, right? So I understand this is really hard to do when someone says something that conflicts with your values or your opinions or your beliefs, especially it depends how passionate you are about what you believe. But demonstrating that you're willing to listen, regardless of what's being said, will start to establish the third one. And the third one is trust. What about trust? And I know it might be a silly question, but how does trust fit into relationships? When you're establishing rapport, how does trust matter? What role does trust have in establishing rapport early on with your customers? You don't trust someone, then you're not be able to be open with them. Sure. Honesty allows them to decrease barriers. Yeah. And here's the thing about trust, and this ties right into retention. Trust inspires loyalty. you are more likely to be loyal, or you're most likely to be loyal to the people you trust, right? You're less likely to be loyal to the people you don't trust. Does that make sense? So what we're trying to do when we talk about retention, and that is trust, they trust to keep engaged in services and overcome those barriers that come up that make them want to quit. They're more likely to do that with a program and people that they trust. And then vulnerability, like Amy says, is incredibly, incredibly important. The other part about trust is trust inspires risk taking. And not all risks are bad, right? The idea that I'm going to engage in services, try this thing that pushes me out of my comfort zone, maybe fail, that's me taking a risk. I'm more likely to take that risk with someone that I trust. That makes sense? So very early on, it shouldn't be about, hey, you got to do X, Y, and Z. It should be, how am I creating a culture, an environment of trust? Because then they're more likely to work in these services and follow through with them that I'm providing. And if it's not you, maybe they'll trust someone who is going to guide them towards negative decisions instead and take risks with that person, right? So trust, loyalty, and engaging in risk is so incredibly important. And these last three here, they all blend together. So if you could just take a look at the screen for me, which of these three stand out to you the most as it relates to building rapport? Having a say in goal planning, being offered options, or if the staff negotiates or dictates terms. Out of those three, which one for you do you think is the biggest priority when interacting with your customers early on? Out of those three questions there. Do I have a say in goal planning? Am I being offered options? Got a lot of number fours, say in goal planning. Yep. Number five, am I being offered options? And I think we would agree these three kind of blend together, right? These three kind of blend together. And this goes back to what we're talking about with when we're watering our plant and trying to make it grow and giving it the thing it needs. One of the primary things you got to give it that it needs is an opportunity to be in the driver's seat of their own goals. One of the biggest areas biggest areas we struggle sometimes in our field, because we so badly want to help others, is we fall into this role. It's called the expert trap, where as soon as we listen to someone and we think we have a feel for what they need, we start telling them what they need. And what that does is it takes the ownership away from them. So when you, and I tie this all back to retention, then it's not sustainable. It's going to be short term, right? So let's talk about specifically that stuff that's going to water your plant. And by the way, look at that guy right there. His name is Mr. Watts. He's my deaf dog. And the reason I have that picture there is because we just got into an argument, but he was being the bigger person and he came over to console me and he was demonstrating compassion, right? Which is one of our things. So, all right, that's not a good joke. We'll keep it moving. You know, not everything is going to hit. I'm okay with that. I'm all right with that. So let's talk about the four things. Let's talk about the four things with your customers that if you do these four things, I promise you, you are going to have a positive impact on engagement and retention. If I'm wrong, call me and say you were wrong, and I'll probably respond. We'll talk to me more about that, right? So let's talk about what these four things are. The first one is partnership. And we talked about this a little bit already, but what do you think is the reason we want to demonstrate to the customers that their opinion is valued and we want their input on how to proceed with these goals? What's the reason we want to demonstrate a partnership with them, especially early on? What do you think why do you think that's one of the things that could help that customer grow? How does partnership matter?
I mean, you want them to know that that it's their goals, it's their, success, and they're in a driver's seat, like you stated earlier, and then that you are here to help them collaborate with helping them reach those goals. And you want to establish that trust right away.
Yep. I like that. And then Lori says creates ownership. What does it matter if, let me ask you a question then with the ownership part. What does it matter if they have ownership in their goals? How can that help with retention? If they felt they have some ownership over the plan, how does that impact retention?
Well, it helps that if they create ownership in it, it's the real, it's feeling, it creates a feeling of it's their thing. It's they can see it, they can own it, they can do it. It's real.
Yes.
I give an analogy all the time. Sorry to cut you off, Curtis.
No,
And my mom used to say this to me, like, well, you know, when you're a kid, you know what I mean? You don't buy some kids don't buy your own items or things, right? But when you're becoming an adult and you start paying for your own things, you take ownership of those, and it has a different value. So you add more value to that. So you're more intentional about pursuing or protecting or keeping, or, you know, it means a lot more to you.
Ooh, I like Kim. Your squad is on point. Michigan. I don't know if it must be the cold weather or because they're not watching football after like week 3. They can focus more on other. I'm just playing.
You can have the cold weather, man.
I'm just joking. Look, what everyone is saying, and then I see it in the chat box too, is if there's ownership and they see value in it, like James just said, when a barrier comes up that gets in the way of them continuing towards these goals, which it will, every single customer that you serve, no matter how well they start off, something is going to get in the way that's going to try to disrupt their progress. It's called life. Yours too, right? Like even if you say, all right, New Year's resolution, I'm gonna eat healthy, and then all of a sudden you work a 14-hour shift and the only thing open is McDonald's. Crap, right? Now there's a barrier in the way of my goals. Here's the thing. If they said, or if they felt they had a say in the plan, when that barrier comes up, they're going to be more invested in its success. So they are going to try to critically problem solve the barrier, right? Because they had a say in the plan. But if they were just taking your advice and it was primarily your plan, when that barrier comes up, they're going to stop and then turn around. They're going to go back to you and they're going to say, hey, your plan, it didn't work because of this. Whereas if they had investment in the plan, they will say, hey, the plan almost didn't work, but I was able to figure out if I did X, Y, and Z, we can still make it happen. You see what I'm saying? So you want to always create a culture and environment of collaboration. Even if you 100% feel I have the right idea, I'm going to tell them what to do. If it's not their plan and life gets in the way, they will stop and they will give up that progress, because just change and working towards something new is hard. The next part, and I'm not going to dive too deep into this, but this is an obvious one, acceptance. I'm going to ask you one simple question. Do you have to agree with someone in order to practice acceptance with them? Oh, we're quick on the nose there. That makes me feel good. Let me ask you another question. Do you have to compromise your own values and beliefs in order to empathize with someone else's? Thank goodness. I see a lot of no's. Would you believe sometimes I get yeses on that? Can you imagine if in this day and age, especially the social media world, if despite someone having an opinion that conflicts with ours or having a value that conflicts with ours, we're still willing to see what the world looks like from their perspective? We're still willing to hear what led them to that opinion? Can you imagine what life would like if we were just willing to do that? And here's the thing, it's really hard to do that depending on how much it conflicts with the stuff that's important to us. So if you're talking to a customer and they say, again, like, I'll sleep on the couch all day and still make more money than you. If that triggers you to think, what the heck are you talking about? And now you're in your feelings. Now you've stopped and you're not going to try to actively seek and understand what's going on from their perspective. And the idea is if you do, they will then be more likely to consider yours. And you're trying to inspire them to see the world a different way, right? So empathy does not require you to agree. Acceptance does not require you to agree. If you empathize with someone, it doesn't mean that you're compromising what's important to you. So don't let your brain trick you and tell you to do that. Acceptance is the foundation, also with compassion. And we talked about compassion with that young man when I went and got the shirt. The best way you can demonstrate compassion with your customers is to actively promote their needs and prioritize their needs over your own, right? So what I mean by that is if they have a need, create a way to demonstrate that not only do you want to support their need, but do some sort of effort that shows them, that demonstrates that you're prioritizing their needs. That is the easiest and quickest way to demonstrate compassion. And if you are demonstrating compassion with them, they're more likely to be vulnerable and open about what's really going on. And the reason you want them to be vulnerable is because then they're going to communicate the barriers that are going to get in the way of their continued involvement in services. And if they communicate them to you, then you get to do what you do so well, is help them problem solve and work through those so they just don't fall off the map. Does that make sense? Yeah. Compassion is everything. And then the last one is evocation. And the best way to describe this is I'm going to ask you a question here. Who's the expert in their behavior? Who's the expert in their decision making?
They are.
They are. If Kim says my battle is the clutter on my desk, who is the expert in what's happening on Kim's desk there? Right? Kim knows the reason she thought about cleaning it up. She knows the real reason she hasn't yet. She knows at that one point in her life where her desk was really clean and she had a good process. She knows why she got away from that. She knows what it would take to recommit to that and start taking the first step today to work towards that goal. Kim is the expert. Your customers are the expert in their goal planning and who they are. Just like you, whatever behavior you chose, whatever goal you chose, you're the expert. You know, deep down. Now, what MI can do is help draw that out of them, get them to start thinking about what they can do to work towards it. But they have it inside them what it takes to not only take a step towards this goal, but to commit to it long term. You don't have it. They have it. They're the main character in their own movie, right? So what we need to do is draw that out of them. And one of the best ways to draw that out of them, one of the best gifts, one of the best tools is it's called an open-ended question. Does anybody know what an open-ended question is versus a closed-ended? What is an open-ended question versus a closed-ended question?
Anything you can't really answer with just a yes or a no.
It's more than just a yes or a no. Yeah, who said that? Look at Sadie, rock star Sadie. Open-ended questions are designed to create a longer answer, whereas closed-ended questions are designed to create a one-word answer. So if I said, do you like this training? No, yes, I don't know. What are your thoughts on this training? Well, it was good. I liked it in the beginning, but then you kept bringing up the bucks and I kind of got distracted, right? You're going to get more information. If I said, Kim, do you think you should start cleaning up your desk? Versus, Kim, what would it take for you to feel more confident that you could have a clean desk? You see what I'm saying there? The open-ended question will drive thinking. And the more you can get your customers thinking, weighing the pros and cons, kind of considering the value in taking a step towards the goal from their perspective, the more likely they're going to take a step towards it. The best gift you can give to someone is a really good question. And here's some ways you can turn any closed-ended question to an open-ended question. So, sometimes it's hard to ask the right questions all the time. So here's a cheat sheet for you. Any closed-ended question can turn these to an open-ended question, right? So if instead of me saying, do you want to discuss your employment goal? I might say, what would you like to discuss? If I said, are you enjoying services? How do you feel about services? If I said, did you like your first job? What was it like for you when you got your first job? If I said, do you think you got fired because you were late? Instead, I could say, well, what do you think made that happen? You with me? That makes sense? Speaking of the firing thing, just real quick, another little tool that just came to mind. If a customer comes to you and you're looking at their resume or whatever it is, and you find out they got terminated a couple times from a job, instead of starting the discussion by why did you get fired or what happened to cause you to get fired, ask them, what is the reason you got the job? Or how did you get the job? Or what made you apply there in the first place? And what they're going to do is start giving you the positives of working towards that goal. We'll then reinforce that there's an opportunity to engage in that plan. Does that make sense? Then you can circle back and say, well, tell me what happened after that, because you still want to find out what happened and got them terminated. But don't start with that. Start with what made you get that, what made you get that job. So all of these stems can turn any closed-ended question to an open-ended question. Since we got a minute here, let's try a pop quiz. We ready for a pop quiz? Since you all are, you love tests. That's what Kim told me. I'm going to give you a closed-ended question. I'm going to give you a yes or no question. I want you to change it to an open question based off what you're seeing here. And you can do it in the chat box. First question. Let's do a simple one. Is it cold outside? In the chat box, change that to an open-ended question. Is it cold outside? What is the weather like? Ooh. What activities do you like to do in the winter? How do you feel about the weather? How does it feel outside? Okay. All right. Okay. Let me give you another one. What if you said to a customer, did you lose your job because you failed a drug test? How can you make that open-ended? Did you lose the job because you failed your drug test? How can you make that open? Tell me what led to you being terminated. Why do you think you were terminated? Tell me about it. I like it. So 2 little tips, and I don't have it on a slide, but I want to give it to you anyways. When asking questions, is if you ask a good question, like, what was the reason you got terminated? And they say, well, it's because I didn't have a car. My car broke down. I didn't know what to do. Let's say that's what they say, right? And then you immediately start thinking about that time when your car broke down and how you handled it, and then how you fixed it, and then what you would do if your car broke down. If you immediately start thinking about all that stuff, what happened? What happens when we do that?
You may just jump in with unsolicited advice.
Here comes that advice, right?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. You start telling them what they should do, because you'll pose your experiences or what you tried on their situation.
Yeah, you stop listening. The most important thing you could do, the best guidance I can give you is the most accurate information. The more accurate information you have about the customer, the better you're going to be able to proceed in a way that best matches what they need to get them to proceed to their goals. But you need accurate information. So that means you got to listen. We got to really listen. If you told me, hey, I'm thinking about exercising, but I don't have any good gyms near me, and immediately I'm like, oh, I know where they can go. They can go to the place I go. And if they go there, I'm going to get a referral bonus. Oh, maybe we can then work out in the morning together. Oh, I wonder if they'll wake up at 5 like me. As soon as I'm doing all that, I stop listening. And I'm probably going to miss something that's really an important piece of this puzzle. Because here's the reality. They know how to go to Google and say gym near me. They can search it. So that's probably not what's really happening. Usually what your customers will give you right at the beginning is just surface level stuff, but it's not the real stuff. So if we immediately start responding to the stuff we initially hear and we're not listening anymore, we're going to miss the thing that can really engage them in service, right? So these right here can change any question to an open-ended question. And then just one more common error that happens all the time is like if I did, hey, James, did you like this training? Or you're kind of distracted, but you think it's going to be good? Or you kind of will use it, but you're not sure if you can use it? James, can you hear me? James, are you going to use this? Or you don't really want to use it?
Man, you gonna let me talk? Man.
Yeah. That's one of the most, believe it or not, that's one of the most common errors with questions is we'll ask a good question, but then we won't give the person time to respond. And then we'll just start asking question after question after question after question. It's okay to be uncomfortable with silence. Ask the question, hey, what are your thoughts on services? And do not respond until they respond. If they don't understand the question you're asking, they'll tell you, I don't know what you're asking. And then you can rephrase it, right? But just ask one question and then take a breath, try to turn your brain off, and then hear the response. Any questions about questions? That's always a good question. What questions do you have about questions? Thoughts on questions. All right. So before we wrap up, let's talk about two main things here. We're going to talk about engagement and retention. Yes, I had to put a picture of Mr. Watts on there again. I don't know what to tell you. I thought I had some rationale here. The idea here is, doesn't he look exhausted? He was exhausted in this picture. The reason I put this in here is because committing to a new goal is exhausting. It's exhausting. Usually in the beginning, it's really exciting. Yeah, 2022. Oh, I got my little meal plan. 2 weeks later. No, right? It's committing, taking the first step towards a new goal is usually not the hardest. When your customers first come to see you, if they show up, if they're referred to you, if they're willing to talk to you, they took the first step. That's usually not the hardest thing. The hardest thing is 3 months later, are they still in service? 6 months later, a year later, are they still maintaining their goals, right? So it's exhausting. But when you have a customer that's engaged, there's a couple signs there. One, they'll express some challenges to you about, hey, this is hard, but that's okay. That's a good sign because they're being open and honest with you that it's tough. And the reality is like we just talked about, committing to a new goal is hard. So you want to hear that. That means they're actively trying and they're putting effort towards making this happen. It's a good thing. The other part is they'll start asking you about more big picture goals. It's always a really good sign, right? So if they ask, hey, what would it take to make more money at work, right? How do I move up in the job? If they start talking about more long-term goals and asking your guidance on that they are really engaged. That is a very, very good sign that you want to capitalize, support, and help them create short, attainable goals to get to that big picture goal. And then, like I said here, setbacks are normal. It's okay to take a step back. The main thing you want to do when customers are engaged and they're doing well in services, one of the biggest misconceptions sometimes is when you have a customer that's really engaged, we think, okay, they're good. I can pay attention somewhere else and maybe pay attention to the ones that aren't to try to get them engaged. When they're engaged is when they should get the most attention. Because remember, committing to this stuff is hard. And the best way to respond to an engaged customer is to put together a relapse prevention plan, right? And what that means is you're helping them proactively plan, not when it's chaos, when they can actually think about the things that could potentially cause them to get off track. So I'll give you a really easy example here. And usually when you're planning, it's in 3 categories. The first category is human error. When you're trying to identify barriers that get in the way, the first category is human error. So an example would be like, if I forgot to set my alarm clock to wake up for work, right? That would be a human error. I forgot. So what you're doing, if I was planning for that, I might ask, hey, hypothetically, if you forgot to set your alarm clock, what would that look like? How would you ensure that you still woke up on time? Does that make sense? I'm trying to plan in advance for human error. The second one is technical, a technical barrier. That would be like if the alarm clock broke. What are your checks and balances? What is your plan if there a technical area comes up? If you all have case notes to write, and every day you enter your case notes on Monday, and all of a sudden the system that you enter in shuts down, how would you respond in that situation so you don't get behind? That's you proactively planning for a technical barrier. Does that make sense? Carolina says set 2 clocks. Yep. And then the last one is environmental. This is the hardest one to proactively plan for. Anyone want to take a guess of an environmental barrier that disrupted a lot of people's progress over the last year and a half, 2 years? Anybody? Pop quiz? Yeah. Right. Think of all the people, like, let's just say fitness goals, who had a plan and a process to commit to their fitness goals, and then all of a sudden all the gyms shut down. Right? That is an environmental barrier that stopped their progress. In Florida, for us, it could be hurricanes, knocking power out, messing with the bus system, stuff like that, right? They're environmental barriers. So when you're planning with your customers, if you want to retain them and you don't want them to quit on services long-term, it's human error, technical, and environmental. Proactively plan in advance. Hey, how would you handle this situation? What would you do if this occurred? Because then when it happens, they won't panic, respond impulsively. Instead, they'll critically think through what's happening and more likely be able to overcome that barrier. Does that make sense? Y'all with me?
Yep.
Pop quiz real quick. What are the 3 areas that you want to proactively plan for? What are the 3 areas? Ooh, I like quizzes. Environmental, yes. Like
Human era, technical era, and environment.
Is that Miss Rose? Is that Miss Rose just coming through in the clutch? Somebody give Miss Rose a big paper that with an A+ on it with red marker and just hang it up right in that cubicle, because she just crushed it. Thank you, Miss Rose. Awesome. And then let's say for whatever reason they do fall off, they are in services, but they go back and they quit, or they want to give up, or they go back to an old behavior. Don't panic. The best thing we want to do during that situation is express support, explore what went wrong from their perspective, and then we want to encourage accountability, but then we get them back on track with their goals. When helping goal plan with your customers, you want to create short-term attainable goals. Short-term attainable goals. What do you think the reason for that is, that you want to set short-term attainable goals?
We want them to be successful with a goal and see that they achieved, and it builds that confidence.
Yep. There it is, that confidence. If we get a short-term goal, and then Man said it as well, short goals bring a quicker win. It gives them an easy win early on, which reinforces that, hey, maybe there is value in working towards this goal. If they do not succeed early on, it's going to tell their brain that, see, I shouldn't be working towards this thing, right? So create an opportunity for them to get an easy win with your customer and then celebrate it, because they might try to minimize it because they want to minimize it because I don't want to acknowledge it, because if I acknowledge it, that means I have to keep working towards it. No, right? Celebrate it. If Kim today has a cluttered desk and then you notice that even though it's still kind of cluttered, the trash can was empty. Kim, that's what I'm talking about. Look at you. Hey, no worries about the desk. You took out the trash. Normally, you never do that. Give Kim some props. That's going to encourage Kim. Okay. All right, I feel pretty good. She is then more likely tomorrow to move all those pencils that are everywhere and put them in a little pencil tray, right? Small wins early on are incredibly important. So make sure you're creating an opportunity for them to get an easy win early on. It'll establish rapport and give them confidence to then take on the next short-term goal. And the more short-term goals and wins they get early on, now they're going to consider taking on the really big one, the scary one, because they have the confidence they have the confidence to do it. Any questions about the engagement and relapse part? Any questions about these two elements? Lori does crochet with the customers? Is that what's happening here? You make Afghan crochet blankets?
Oh, no,
No? Do you want to elaborate on that?
no. I was just saying that, you know, for a quick, to make an Afghan, I won't make an Afghan. It takes too much time. But if I crocheted a pot holder and then keep crocheting pot holders, then one day I could put them all together and there I got an Afghan.
Hey, I like that.
Hey.
Hey, you know what? In all seriousness, what Lori is doing there too is exactly what you want your customers to do. Lori is creating her own plan that will put her in the best position to be successful with this goal, because she knows there's one way this is gonna happen that I'll feel good about, and she makes it. If instead I said, Lori, here's what you need to do with your Afghan crochet skills, you're gonna tune out so quick. All right, whatever. Right? But Lori created her own plan. So good job, Lori. So let's end here. This is my only other quote, and the quote is just, I know why. When I moved from direct care work to a program manager at one of our programs, I went and met with a student, and I was looking at his attendance record at the trade school, and it was not good. It was not good at all. So I said, hey man, how's school going? I noticed we have some absences here. He's like, man, don't worry about that. I'm good. Okay. I said, well, talk to me about employment. How's the job going? He was like, no, I left that job, but you can go ahead and do some applications for me. Ooh, woosah, right? Woosah. So just in that conversation, I just happened to bring up, hey man, just let you know, you're not going to see me as much because I got moved to program manager. I'll still be around, but you won't see me as much. He's like, yeah, that's nice. That's nice. So we end up talking. And right when we're about to leave, I swear to you, he stops me and he goes, hey, I know why you got promoted. And I swear to you, I thought he was going to say something slick or some sort of joke. And he said, I know why you got promoted. It's because you don't give up on people, and you never gave up on me. Another example that if you give the plant soil, water, sunshine, it'll be more likely to grow upwards towards the light. So as you all are getting out there, you're working with your customers, commit and be disciplined to doing the things we talked about today. Not necessarily if they choose to change, because everyone has to make that choice, but how disciplined were you to doing the things that'll put them in the best position to grow? And I assure you, more often than not, they will. So that is me. We are at the end of our training. I'd like to say thank you to everybody. You could check me out at speakformc.com. Join me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of that stuff. And, you know, I'm sending out a little funny, goofy newsletter later today that has me wearing a wig. That's all I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to provide additional context. So if you'd like to be a part of that newsletter, just send me an email and I will add you. I will add you on that. So we have found the end. Any questions, comments about what we discussed so far? I will open the floor to you all.
Curtis, I just want to publicly thank you for this training. It just reinforced so much in terms of skills to utilize for clients. Gave me a deeper perspective on how to engage the young adults that I work with here at Michigan Works. So I'm appreciative of what you do. And it's powerful, man. And thank you.
I appreciate that, James. Thank you, sir.
I wanted to share something. I really liked your analogy of the plant and needing certain things to cultivate or to grow. And now that I'm a new farmer, I'm kind of a farmer's wife apprentice now. I've learned that all seeds can grow eventually, but not all dirt is soil. So you can put a seed in dirt, but it may not grow because there's no nutrients in it. Just like some of our young people, they don't have the support system at home. And some seeds will grow automatically. No, you just give a little bit of water and a little bit of fertilizer and all that jazz and the sun, and it'll come right up because that soil already has all the nutrients in the dirt. It's not dirt anymore, it's soil. So it's all going to grow eventually. It just takes more seasons for some seeds.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, 100%. In the end, you know, every plant is going to grow differently. We have to actively choose to work
Yeah.
towards that goal. But again, how disciplined are we? How committed are we to doing the things that'll put that
Yeah.
that customer in the best position to grow? That's why we are here. So
Yeah.
very, very well said. Kim, if there aren't any other questions or comments, if you see on your end, then it looks like we even got this amazing Michigan crew out a little early for lunch, and that's always a win. Talk about small wins.
We always love the gift of time, especially before lunch. No, I don't have anything else. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording if I can do that.